we started seeing the influx of the Hispanic construction workers coming in. That's when the cartels really started being more overt. And that's when we started seeing what I believe was CJNG, the number 2 cartel in the world, start coming, setting up shop on these reservations.
The opinions of the guests and host are their own and do not represent the opinions of Ironclad, the Border Patrol, or the Department of Homeland Security.
Welcome to Borderland, Narcosis, an Ironclad original presented by First Form Supplements. Go check out your supplements at firstform.com/Borderland. My next guest is Stacy Zinn. She is a former DEA agent and resident agent in charge of Montana. She has a very incredible career understanding the roots of some of the causes of the cartels moving into Montana, but as well as some of the South America issues that we see today. You guys go check it out. Reading through some of your background, one, I thought it was really awesome and fascinating that, a female agent has gotten so high. I've never been able to speak to someone who's been at that level as you have. And so that was a very interesting thing. A lot of my career was spent in El Paso, so I thought that was pretty cool. I think there's some places that we've probably crossed and ate at the same places because El Paso has some good food.
Oh, absolutely. And good frozen margaritas.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. There's I can't even think of the place. There's one place we always go to in El Paso for when I used to drink was frozen margaritas. But so, ma'am, you've had a very, very extensive career. And what I thought was something that was very interesting is your time you've been in Montana. Reading some of your bio, I had no idea that there were some of the cartel issues out there. And so I really want to dig into that today. But before we start, would you mind giving the audience a brief bio and your background?
Yes. So my name is Stacy Zinn. I was with the Drug Enforcement Administration approximately close to 23 years. I started my career off in El Paso, Texas at 2001 as a baby agent, special agent, a gun toter. Where I did undercover work. I actually worked with the FBI task force, and back then it was called Customs. So we actually was a small family. We worked the border cases, worked a lot of investigations that were coming. Back then, the marijuana and cocaine that were coming through was going normally to like Chicago or New York. So we worked a lot of multi-state investigations. Then I was selected for a tactical team where I relocated to Virginia. And our job was to go back and forth to Afghanistan to locate the heroin labs that were being run by the Taliban / Al-Qaeda, do international conspiracy cases, and get them tried back in the U.S. Did 4 tours in Afghanistan, and then I was fortunate enough to be selected for South America tour, where I did 5.5 years down in Peru. My job there was to liaison with the Peruvian officers, teach them how to be drug cops, build international cocaine cases, and also to build their wire interception program. They're one of the last countries in South America to have that type of assets to be able to go after these narco traffickers. And so then I raised my hand to become a supervisor, relocated here to eastern Montana, where I ran the tactical diversion team. That's pretty much like the pill squad, and go after rogue physicians or individuals who are doing hand-to-hand pill buys. And then I was fortunate enough to then be promoted to the resident agent in charge of the entire state, where I oversaw 3 offices in Montana for approximately 5 years. So I had a great, great career and had a lot of wonderful experiences. And if it wasn't for my mandatory retirement, I'd still be doing it.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And how many other females, is it common for a female to get to that position of the resident agent in charge for the DEA at that time?
Back then, it was, especially in this region, I was the first one. It is the agency does try hard to get women to promote. Unfortunately, there's a discrepancy between male agents and female agents just because the application pool. And so we are in the minority. But it's not saying that women can't raise up in the chain of command and become a run the office and stuff. But for this region, this was a first. So it was interesting being here in Montana and dealing with the local law enforcement, sheriff's department stuff, and having a female that was in charge here for the entire state.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see how that is. The Border Patrol has, I used to be in a Border Patrol, so the Border Patrol has some very high end, like high level packs, um, you know, in charge of their facilities, and there's no issues there. But the Border Patrol has a really good system in that. But DEA, FBI, I've worked with, and ATF and all that. It's hit and miss when you get to see that, so it's pretty exciting to see.
No,
You know
absolutely.
what is interesting? I have another friend of mine who lives in Montana currently right now. He's a former FBI agent. And, I've talked to him, I've asked him questions about it, and really interesting to see that. What was it like for you starting to first see any kind of hint that the cartel was involved in anything in Montana? And when you saw that, was that a surprise for you?
Well, it's funny because when I was in Peru and raised my hand for this supervisory position, I was pulled aside by the regional director, shoot, and she was a female, a Latina. And she's like, "What are you doing, Stacy? Because you are you are on the fast track, and now you're going to derail yourself, and you're going to Montana, and therefore you're going to, this is where your career is going to die." And kept going to Montana and got up here, and I was pleasantly surprised. It's kind of ironic. I started seeing whispers of the Sinaloa Cartel coming into the state of Wyoming, and what they would do, they'd transport, or they would send out a scout team, and then the drugs would be transported um, into Montana. And what they would do is that they would come in quickly, distribute the drugs, and they made like a loop. They'd go to one reservation and then come up like to Billings, and then they come out to the Northern Cheyenne, dropping off, and then they reverse course, gather up the monies, and then go back to central Wyoming, and then fly out. And so it was hard for us to even, number one, get eyes on the boots on the ground, eyes on the situation when we heard of them coming through the area. And then each and every time they would change up transporters and stuff. So we weren't able to identify. As 2017, 18 and stuff, we started seeing more of the cartels become more overt, and especially when the pill prices really jumped up, meaning a 30 milligram well, let me back up. A 30 milligram of Oxycontin on the streets back in around 2015, 16 in my area in Billings, Montana, it was high as $35 per pill. If they're ripping me off, $42. You go up to one of the reservations up in Fort Peck, they could charge $67. Go across to Rocky Boy, that's $89 for that one pill, and go all the way to Sydney, Montana, back in the when the oil boom was popping. They could charge $120 for that one pill. So the
Oh,
cartel
wow.
started recognizing that they can make a lots of money in the state of Montana. So we started seeing an uptick. And then also then when after COVID, we started seeing the borders open, we started seeing the influx of the Hispanic construction workers coming in. That's when the cartels really started being more overt. And that's when we started seeing what I believe was CJNG, the number two cartel in the world, start coming, setting up shop on these reservations. And that was my experience with that.
Yeah. What was it about? Why were the pills a thing? Why was it was it that the drug of choice at the time is all the fentanyl or Oxycontin pills? Is that just what it was?
It was this, well, this is meth country. Don't get me wrong. And
Got it.
so when the pill craze came here, we saw then individuals with sporting injuries, young adults start dabbling in the pills. Then what we saw was then the cartel goes, you know what? We don't want big pharma to make all this money. So then they started sending up little small baggies of brown heroin. And then they were charging $14 for the little bag, converting the pill users over to heroin. And then fentanyl started coming up, and they started experimenting with it because this was not a heavy heroin state. So what they started doing is gradually introducing the fentanyl product into the area and see where it grabbed hold. And so we saw our northern reservations start gravitating towards the opiates, but our southern reservations were still hanging on to meth use and marijuana. So but with the influxes of pills surrounding us, Denver, Salt Lake City, Washington, it just made sense that eventually it came across like that. Meanwhile, we also had Chicago and Minneapolis started sending. We had different rival gang members coming and bringing their pills up to the northeastern reservation. So that's when we start seeing the pills start creeping in. But because it's so far from the southwest border, the prices just kept going up and up and up.
Yeah, that was my question. Most of us hear about this, the southern border and how that works in some of those southern states, Texas, Arizona, California, whatnot. But now we're talking northern border. And now my question was, is this coming from the northern border down, or is it still from the southern border transporting up north?
It was still coming from the southwest border, and that was very interesting to me because it was 2017 when I started snooping around on the northern border and realizing that we don't have a lot of assets up there, and that was to me was a huge problem. The last thing I wanted was a dirty bomb coming in, through the northern border on my watch, and so I coordinated with the Border Patrol. We started coordinating with the Canadians and trying to figure out how do we fix this problem? Who's protecting our northern border? It was kind of eye opening when you ask the Canadians, like, what kind of assets? What are we doing here? And they would say, oh, we're depending on you. So what woke me up is that our back door was wide open. Meanwhile, Canada has some super fentanyl labs, and that's when they had pretty much opened up the doors for the refugees. So I was also worried about the gang members and the cartels starting to form relationships and starting to see if we see that drug flow come southbound.
Yeah.
But we didn't in the state of Montana. And it's still puzzling to me because of probably the mountain structure, Glacier National Park and that mountain range. There's gaps, yes. But we're still not seeing the flow of drugs come southbound. We're still seeing the drugs come from the southwest border or up to the ports of entry into Washington or whatever and creep across that way.
Yeah, I spent some time in the northern border and in Canada on the border itself, and really surprised in how little, I guess, personnel are on those borders, right? It's so hard to manage. Sometimes weather is going to be an issue. If it's too cold, it's hard to manage. Sometimes the terrain, but it's a very different process. I worked a lot of my career down in the southern border, so I understand that groove pretty well. And going into Canada and talking to them on their side, it was kind of a trip to see that. Yeah, I'm surprised myself that that northern border, I guess, routes isn't used as much as it probably could be. But I think you're right. It's things with the terrain and whatnot is what makes it more challenging for them.
I believe that we see probably more drug flow like around New York area going southbound or the state of Washington, that area. But
Yep.
Montana, we don't see rarely. What we do see though, we see the Canadian drivers coming down from Sweetgrass and go all the way down to Long Beach, California or Ontario, and they're picking up their drug loads, meth and cocaine, and then going back up that corridor, and it goes northbound.
If you're looking for a recovery shake that actually does its job, check out Formula One from First Form. It's a rapid digesting whey protein isolate made for post-workout recovery. That means that it gets into your system fast to help the muscles repair and cut down soreness. It mixes ultra smooth, it's easy on your stomach, and it tastes legit. All the flavors are good, but for me, Cinnamon Toast Crunch is hands down the best one. Plus, it's NSF certified for sport and Informed Choice certified, so you know it's clean. First Form is giving free shipping on orders over $100, and if you don't love it, they'll give you your full refund. Hit the link in the description and grab Cinnamon Toast Crunch Formula One today. It's interesting. Do you think, I mean, you've heard about how the cartels operate in the southern borders, in other areas. Do the cartels operate in places like Montana or the northern states a lot different? Do they have like a different kind of tempo?
Yes, because it's so far away from the border, A lot of people they would say, it takes forever to get to Montana. The transporters would like, oh my gosh, I got to go to Montana. So what we started end up seeing was CJNG, who I believe was CJNG, would set up shop in, like, for example, Washington, and they had more of a Hispanic population. And so then they would send their transporters across, and they hit especially the reservations because there was already established relationships, but you wouldn't see them actually settle on the reservations for it wasn't until 2022-ish we started seeing that. So you would see the cartel get in and get out. Whereas on the southern areas, you started like, southern states, you see the cartel set up cells. They set up stash locations right there and distribute locally. We weren't seeing that until at the very end of my career. And what took place is that the perfect storm is, for example, like in Gallatin County, Big Sky, and Bozeman, we started seeing heavy, heavy construction take place. And we started seeing the Hispanic population came in. And then we started seeing the cocaine flowing in that corridor. And in Gallatin County, we started seeing the cartels start setting up shop there. There was more when the Hispanic population came in. They were from Mexico, they're from Honduras, even from Venezuela. So they were starting to grow a little bit of a community. Meanwhile, we saw some nefarious actors come in and start setting up shop in that. And then people got used to seeing the Hispanic faces here, and so we started seeing like restaurants, Mexican restaurants, start opening up more. So the food trucks. Meanwhile, Spokane, that region, that corridor, Yakima, you started seeing a huge uptick of drug shipments going up there, stash locations there, and then start coming across. So they started acting like they normally do on the southwest border of trying to establish that this is my territory. But they haven't been able to get a strong footing yet because there's Montana, the population is so spread out that they haven't been able to say Billings is ours, Great Falls is ours. Now they'll say the reservations is theirs, but they haven't been able to plant their flag like they have in the other southern cities.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what you're saying essentially is that as construction started to grow and like labor workers started to kind of move into the areas, the cartel was able to kind of blend in with that community and kind of hide
Yes.
themselves within that. And so that's
Yes.
how Montana kind of became a hotbed.
Yes, and yes, that was the start of it. I mean, we do have migrate workers that up in the northwestern part of the state are cherry trees and stuff like that, or the beet factory here, but they are transit. They come and go. What the construction workers, the migrants that started doing that, they started coming in and actually staying year round, and then that opened up the door once word got out that, hey, Montana still is open for business and we have a lot of untapped customers. That's when we started seeing the more uptick in the cocaine shipments, and then also the different types of drugs. That's a college town, so we started seeing that type of flow of drugs, and then the demand started really going up.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then you mentioned the Indian reservations. I had a lot of experience with Indian reservations on the border. It's hard to work an Indian reservation when they don't always give you the approvals to respond to the area if we hear that there's some kind of drug trafficking going on at the time and whatnot, because the Indian reservation kind of runs on its own kind of legal system, if you will. And so we weren't given authorization to, I would say, to respond to when you hear, hey, there's supposedly loading up inside the reservation. We had trouble kind of getting approvals to do that. And so they were using all these Indian reservations in the Texas area and even in Arizona and whatnot to transport so that we couldn't have any access going cross into the reservation. Is that similar to what happens in Montana as well? Do you have challenges working on the reservation?
The local officers do. That's why I was very happy to give TFO, Task Force Officer Status, Title 21 to what y'all would say silver badge. And so we have 7 reservations up here, and it is a problem to have the state the state DCI, Division of Criminal Investigators, and the local sheriff's department and local PD could not go onto their land because they're sovereign nation without Title 21 protection or being task force officer also for FBI or HSI. So, but DEA, because of a lack of boots on the ground here in the state of Montana, there was a limited number of us. So for us to respond, that was also a problem. So that's why we're normally 2 steps behind the cartel until they started trying to plant their flag, and that's when we got the footing, was able to gut the organization back in 2023, and now the cartel's trying to backfill and fill in those gaps.
Can you explain more about that? What happened there? So you guys identified that there was cartel in the area, and then you were able to put together some kind of operation to disrupt it.
Absolutely. So the cell that we identified was actually based in Omak, Washington, and they had liaison with actually 2 particular families that were based out of Crow Agency or the Crow Reservation. And what we started seeing was a pipeline of drugs from Omak down to Crow Reservation. And then what they started doing was coming through Montana, go to Missoula, drop off maybe just a little bit in Flathead Reservation, come across to Great Falls, dropping off in Rocky Boy, going up to Havard, coming down to Fort Belknap, dropping off, and then laying their head down in Crow, and then springboarding the drugs back up to Billings and over to Northern Cheyenne. So they're impacting at least 5 reservations at that time. They got greedy, and I know, once they hear me say that, they're going to go, mental note, do not get greedy on the reservations. What they were doing was trying to establish presence, which had not been done before. I mean, you have maybe 1 or 2 stragglers that have blended into the culture, but we started seeing part of the cell start trying to blend, bring in trailers, start setting up shop, and that's when we got wind of it. And it took it was DEA. We teamed up with FBI and BIA, and we were able to work a long-term investigation. Now, being up in Montana, law enforcement doesn't like changes. So when I'm saying, okay, we're going to do this investigation like DEA does long-term conspiracy cases, everyone's like, what? No, let's just arrest a couple. No, let's do this right. So this investigation was anywhere from 8 to 13, 14 months. I believe it's a 23-man indictment here in the state of Montana. We were able to bring DEA and FBI on board in Washington. They did, and BIA. They did a big indictment on that cell there. And long story short, we're able to gut the organization, which left a huge vacuum. And then now you have Sinaloa, and you have, some other stragglers that are trying to reestablish this relationship, but they're doing it the old-fashioned way of not being physical as overt on the reservations, because they realize what their mistake was. And then so they're doing things because there's investigations going on. They're changing up their method of operation.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. You said 23 members were arrested?
I think approximately 23 members that were indicted and arrested.
Out here on Borderland, we talk a lot about cartels and traffickers, but some threats hit closer to home. Take the CJNG timeshare scam we covered. People get scammed out of thousands. Their personal info stolen and sold online. Your name, your address, phone numbers, even your family's info can end up in the wrong hands, putting you at risk for identity theft, scams, or worse. I value having control over my personal data, and that is why I've teamed up with DeleteMe. Like the experts we've talked to on Borderland who go after bad actors, DeleteMe works to remove your personal info from hundreds of people search and data broker sites. They do it continuously, securely, and without outsourcing. Real privacy advisors are available if you need help. For over 15 years, DeleteMe has been leading the fight to protect personally identifiable information for individuals and businesses' employees. They verify your info is accurate on these sites before removing it, cutting down unnecessary exposure. It's very simple. Just create an account, fill in your basic information on the dashboard, and DeleteMe takes care of the rest. You'll receive a report about what was removed in about a week. So take control of your personal info. Go to joindeleteme.com/ironclad and use coupon code Ironclad or scan the QR code to get started. One of the few services that actually keep your information out of the wrong hands. Let me ask you this, a little shift on the questioning. President Trump claimed that he would send U.S. troops into Mexico to combat the drug war. From your experience, how realistic and how feasible is this?
It's I have to chuckle because the problem with Mexico and Canada, I mean, our NAFTA partners, trade partners, but something needs to be done. The cartels are out of control. It's not just with drug trafficking. It's with human trafficking. It's with sex trafficking. Mexico's a narco state. A lot of people don't want to talk about that. You look back in the 90s when we took care of Bolivia, we actually took the gloves off, labeled them a narco state, went in, took care of business, and we controlled the flow of cocaine for a period of time. Of course, then we turned around and tripped on ourselves and let things reestablish again. But you have to do something in order to get the cartel, and we're at that point now. Because if we say that Trump, if the administration changes parties and stuff, it's going to be business as normal, and they're going to be rearing itself up even more so. So realistically, going in, I mean, look what we do with Escobar behind the scenes. To get rid of, I shouldn't say get rid of him, to eliminate that threat. So we've always been behind the scenes trying to help remedy the situation. Sometimes it takes greater cojones to do something outside the box in order to shake up things and make a dent in the poisons that are flooding our street. But the last thing I will say right now is that we need to change the demand for it. And this is where coming up to Montana really changed my attitude on supply and demand. When I was a baby agent down in El Paso, I was sitting across from a cartel member, and I was saying, why send all this stuff? Why do y'all do this? And the comment back was, Stacy, mija, just if there was no demand for it, then, we wouldn't be sending it. And I'm like, I was insulted. But coming up here, I'm like, the man was straight up. If there wasn't a demand, they wouldn't be sending the product.
Yeah, we've talked about it in several episodes about the demand is, the problem is partly us, the American culture. For some reason, we have this very drug addiction / culture that just doesn't stop the demand of it, and so it feeds their whole narrative, why they continue to make money off it. It's a sad thing. It's kind of a, how do you fix it? We've had some people say that maybe the way to fix it is legalize it. And then you'll have, most law enforcement officers like, no, never. And then, journalists are always like, legalize it. And so there's really interesting argument that happens in these podcasts. And I guess I could almost identify what each certain person based on their background would choose. But it's a hard one. How do you stop this, right? How do we dismantle the cartel by going into Mexico or assisting in Mexico in efforts, right? Obviously, right now, we have a lot of issues down in Venezuela as well, right? Another counterpart, someone who else is assisting in this effort with the cartel, working with them and transporting drugs all over the world right now. You have Colombia, who's making a lot of the drugs as well. And so now we have these these three countries that are working together. Now, I wouldn't say Mexico's personally working with them, but the cartel who kind of runs Mexico is working with them, and that whole issue. And so we are now in this really weird space. The last podcast I had was with Ed Calderon. He's kind of an expert in the Mexican, I would say, cartels and kind of how they work. And he believes that there's a possibility of us going into Venezuela. From your experience watching everything that you've seen on the news and everything you've done, is that something you think is a possibility, and is it something you think is necessary?
There's knowing Venezuela, there's more to it.
Yeah.
We lost South America. I would say when we started hyper focusing on the Middle East during 9/11 and stuff, there was a huge gap where we took our finger off the pulse of South America and Central America. I would say 2000, 2003, 4, and 5, the whole time, and we never regrouped. What I ended up seeing was that Hugo Chavez threw DEA out of the country around 2005. So then we stopped seeing what was happening in Venezuela. Then you had Evo Morales in Bolivia throw DEA out. I want to say, I could be wrong on the date, around 2008 and 2009 timeframe. So your cocaine comes from Bolivia, Colombia, and Peru. So we started seeing that shift. What we also started seeing, and it's just not classified information, but we started seeing the movement of Hezbollah and Hamas coming through South America, and then they were source information and class was indicating that they were going up to Venezuela and being trained. So then you had Hugo Chavez then change, or then Maduro came in and then continued the same type of operations that Chavez was doing. And then you see you had the Chinese coming in, making inways, and then you had Russians coming in all over the place. Meanwhile, we're focused on the Middle East. We're not keeping our fingers on the pulse. So terrorists and narcotics were going hand in hand. And then we were seeing the training of these terrorist organizations were taking place, and also to imitate they were studying the Mexican culture in order to go Central America and up to Mexico and then springboard up. So our back door has been wide open. And there's things going on, I believe, in Venezuela, besides the drug trafficking, obviously, besides the training of terrorists. There's something going on that Trump and the intel agencies know that they need to keep their finger on the pulse. And you peel back the onion, there's more to it. And we don't know. We don't need to know. We just need to know that Trump has our best interest at heart, that has America's best interest at heart, which I believe he does. So us going into Venezuela is not going to be just because of narco trafficking.
Yeah. No, I hear you. That's interesting. And I want to get back to this. I have a question on this, but before I get to that question, I'm really curious about what years was your time in Afghanistan? And I only ask that because I spent time in Afghanistan myself. And then I want to kind of tie it into this whole conversation where we're at now. But what years were you spending in Afghanistan?
So I started there. I had boots on the ground of last portion of March of 2005. And then last time when I departed was November of 2007. So I did 4 tours there. And I say DEA tours, not military, 12-month tours. So I was going back and forth throughout that time frame. And meanwhile, between the tours, I was jumping over to Tajikistan or Haiti or Dom Rep or something like that. So, yes.
Yeah, I was in Afghanistan in 2004. Sometime that was sometime of like the winter, I believe. No, that was sometime in summer. And then 2007 in more of the winter. And we only deployed for 3 to 4 months, sometimes 6, depending. So same kind of cycle. I was with the special operations at the time. And so very similar. So which is interesting to me is that you say that you guys were there trying to help with the heroin, correct? Is that what it was? The mission?
Correct.
And so when you were doing that, go ahead. I want to hear. So I want to hear, I guess here's where the whole big question is. Where you're spending time doing that, right? What that became the necessary kind of focus at that time is when we're taking the pulse off South America, which now is the conversation we get back right into. Is so while you guys were there doing that mission, did you feel like it was necessary, or did you feel like, man, I really feel that the mission needs to be down south? That's the bigger threat.
Well, you remember back, did you ever hear of our program Snowcap? So DEA did a Snowcap program back in the early 90s. And that's when they went into the jungle regions. They took care of business. They destroyed the labs. They did a bang-up job. That's when we basically took back over Bolivia. So the ideal for the FAST team, which is what they called us, was to go in and help. The Taliban and Al-Qaeda were using narcotics proceeds from the sale of heroin to go into other countries, buy bombing material, and then use those bombing materials to set up IEDs against the military, against ISAF. So there was a need to cut off the money flow. The problem is when we went in, even though DOD was supporting us monetarily wise, there was still an argument is the Taliban really making a lot of money off of the from the heroin sales? We knew that based on our intelligence. So there was a need to stop the flows of money. And how do you do that? You build investigations against them. You destroy the labs, yada, yada, yada. Now, meanwhile, I mean, with South America, we have agents. DEA is in over 70 different countries throughout the world. So it's not like we took the resources away from South America. The administrations took their finger off the pulse. We didn't liaison as well. And when I say we as the government, we didn't liaison as well. We didn't keep those relationships ongoing like we should have. We took, DOD took a lot of their assets and put them over this way. But meanwhile, I mean, it's a cat and mouse game. Things trickle out. So looking back, was it smart for DEA to go in? Eh, yes, it was. But we went in pretty much naked. And what do I mean by that? We had a lack of resources. We didn't have the assets needed to. We struggled on getting air support initially. We had to embed with the Brits or Canadians or Australians, which they were wonderful, wonderful partners. And there was too few of us with boots on the ground there. Big country, different culture, had to set up assets, confidential sources, language barrier, and also at the Afghan government was very corrupt. And we were in a war zone building investigations.
Yeah,
we did the
and
yeah
you guys were the trailblazers of it. So you had to start from
correct.
ground up, right?
Yes.
So which took a lot more time, took a lot more resources, and in the end, did you feel that you guys made an impact? Did the DEA make an impact in Afghanistan that was important? That was important to this war. That was important to the American people.
We initially made the impact, and it got out of control. And what do I mean by that? Is when we turned the country over into ISAF, not everyone upheld their end of what they're supposed to do. Production, you'll look in, I would say 2006, 7, production of heroin started, or the opium field started growing even more so. I really believe that we didn't have, prior to us going in, we didn't have true statistics of how much the Taliban was controlling the opium production. We didn't have true numbers of what we were dealing with. So people started paying attention a bit 2006 and 7, and it looked like the heroin trade just skyrocketed. So did we make a dent? Initially, did we set up some good Afghani teams to actually do what they're supposed to do to combat that? DOJ came in and tried to set up a court system. The problem that America had was that we set it up to make it mirror our system. And you can't do that in a culture that it's Klansmen. They respect the head of the clan versus the president of the country. So you're battling that ideology. Overall, you look right now how we pulled out of Afghanistan during the Biden administration. We went backwards now. Was it worth what we did? If you look at that way, absolutely not. But did we make a difference when we went in? Did we help save lives? Did we help save females' lives that were actually Christians that are trying to live life? Did we help the female population to get educated and to, the burqas were off in 2005-ish. They came back on into 2006 and 7. And it was crushing to see that. But did we save some lives initially? Absolutely.
If you're into quality gear, you need TacPack, a monthly subscription box loaded with tactical gear from the top brands like Battle Arms Development, 9line, 511, and more. You can choose from TacPack Standard, $59.95 shipped with $90 to $120 worth of products, or TacPack Plus, $139.95 shipped with $240 to $300 worth of products. This September, TacPack Plus is stacked with over $330 worth of gear, including Battle Arms Development, 9line, and Next Level Armament. Use code Ironclad at TacPack.com for a free $70 tactical gift, pushing your value past $400. TacPack. gear you'll actually use.
I want to thank our partners over at Ammo Squared. They've built what they call America's Ammunition Reserve. Basically, this is an ammo savings account. You can sign up, pick from more than 70 different calibers. You can set an auto-buy budget and either choose a shipping schedule, or you can just let your personal reserve grow. Over time, your ammo stacks up and it's stored for free in their climate-controlled facilities in Texas and Idaho until you are ready to ship. There are no minimums, there's no extra fees. It works whether you have a small budget or you just don't want to drop a few grand all at once. Thank you so much, Ammo Squared, for providing this cool service and for supporting the show.
Oh, absolutely. And I didn't, that wasn't a question to really poke at you. It was more like, I know a lot of things that were done, and I'm very, I see it in a very positive light. I get it. When it comes to this subject, it's just interesting to hear, because you surprised me when you mentioned that, and then it made me think about the whole circle of it all. And was it America who was purchasing the majority of the heroin from Afghanistan? No. Who was it?
It was Europe. That was, I mean, you had the heroin's going to Iran. It was going to Pakistan. It was going to, into Europe and also into Russia. And so there wasn't that much heroin going back to, we'd see some going to New York and San Francisco. And that was a criticism of, okay, what are we doing this for? But again, I circle back around, is that we were trying to get on top of the money flows to these narco terrorists that were actually growing in number, hiding in Pakistan. And really, I mean, you see what happened. Al-Qaeda's stronger than ever, ISAT-K, and it's because our funding. You got to cut off the funding mechanism in order to make a difference. And that's what we were trying to do.
So that brings me back to South America. During the whole time we're out there, South America is kind of changing and evolving. And now we have the situation we have today. It feels like there's a lot of power down there. There's a lot of corruption down there. You have Colombian cartels. You have, cartels everywhere now who are kind of all involved in the drug trade, in corruption, in sex trade, in human trafficking, all of this. From your experience right now, when you see what's happening down there, how do we win? What does winning look like in trying to slow this down, stop the drugs, and kind of keep America safe from all those things that the cartel tends to make money off of?
Well, I've never said this, on video before. And so we need to strengthen our agencies and get back to business. Back in the day, we used to have a robust CIA going and conduct operations on foreign soil, human sources, strengthen that program again, know what's going on in these different countries, start helping behind the scenes again, building good leadership in these countries instead of catering to the Marxists, the socialists, and the communists. What we're seeing right now is a spread of these ideologies taking place, and you see the different leaderships in these different countries, and this is why we had the problem. You look at the former president of Mexico. He wasn't right-leaning. He wasn't even a moderate. He was left-leaning. He had his own ideology, and we saw the cartels. And Mexico government has been, and I know I'll probably get in trouble for this, but they've had some problems in their house. We saw that back in 1985 with Kiki Camarena, the murder of him and the pilot. So you look at what happened to Brazil. Brazil has gone back and forth, right, left, right, left. You look at Argentina. You look at Peru. Peru is depending on the leftists that are in the country. When leftists involved, you see the trafficking of drugs go up. Why is that? They're making money, and that's how they're able to support their cause. You look at Venezuela as a prime example. The dictator Chavez, he wasn't right-leaning. He was dictatorship, and he opened up the door for the terrorists to come in, and then it springboards to all the havoc that we have right now. So it's helping. America needs to get back to what it used to do, help good people get elected in these foreign countries. But I think we're so far now down the path of fighting ourselves that we're going to lose this battle if we don't wake up. If that makes sense.
Yeah. It does. It does. Let me ask you this. How about Montana? What do you see in Montana in the next 5 to 10 years of what's going on currently with the cartels, with drugs, with the northern border, kind of the vulnerabilities of the northern border? What do you see Montana looking like in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's going to depend on its leadership. With Montana, we're starting to get people are waking up to the fact that we need more boots on the ground. That actually people in Montana count. So, this current administration is actually of refocusing its efforts to get staff up offices more so. The problem that we have is though that we've had an influx of individuals that want to keep Montana. Ugh, we're seeing people from California. We're seeing people that have different points of views that do not want um to I don't want to say round up to any illegals, but they do not want to do what it needs to keep Montana safe. And so we're battling that. Again, leadership has a large part of it. If our jails are full, which they are, then people are getting a slap on the wrist. And so we're seeing a revolving door. We're seeing cartels. I mean, they're going to backfill the reservations. They're going, and if in our reservations, it's a circle. It's supply and demand. They did not learn their lesson with the cartel being right there on their land. They're not cleaning themselves up. They need to do that. People need to be proactive. We need to get back to educating the kids here in the state of Montana. I mean, yes, we have bullying, we have the media, social issues and stuff like that, but we got to get back to educating the kids of why drugs are bad, why they shouldn't do it, what it does. So if we don't start saying, yeah, we have a problem here, then we're going to be so overwhelmed because this is virgin territory. You still don't have the Latin kings or the Norteños are creeping in, but you don't have these well-established gangs planting their flag. They're trying. But if people don't wake up, put good leadership into office that's going to say enough is enough and stay focused on the criminal element, then Montana's going to end up falling like other rural areas.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting time in our world. I really appreciate your time, Stacy. Please, is there anything else that you want to mention to the audience? Whether I'm not sure if you have any social media that you want them to follow, or is there any points that we missed here that you want to kind of give to the audience?
I did just hammer about educating the kids. And I really believe that parents need to be parents and start getting involved. Know what your kids are doing. This, fallacy of marijuana, I smoked marijuana when I was younger and look at me, I'm fine. And saying, you know what, they can smoke a joint every now and then. They need to know the types of drugs. Marijuana with the high THC, that's the next big problem when it comes to mental health issues. Because that high THC, it's a lot different from the Cheech and Chong marijuana that the parents used to smoke. They need to know what their kids are consuming, whether it be a dab product or concentrates. When you have like a single joint here in the state of Montana, back in my day, a joint was anywhere from 1.2 to 2.3 THC levels. You pass it around, maybe you get 0.9% THC levels in your system. You sat on the couch and watch Fast Times at Ridgemont High and ate Doritos. But you fast forward today here in Montana, that same joint is anywhere from 33 to 35% THC levels. So those
Wow.
edibles are 80%. That dab product is 90%. Parents should be going, what does that mean? And it means that these kids, where their brains are still developing, it's harming their brain. Adults can handle it a lot more, but the growing brain, it's harming that. It's causing mental health issues. Parents need to educate themselves on that and not be afraid to talk about it. They need to know what these kids are doing in their schools, in the parties on the weekend. They need to educate the hard drugs, and they need to have that conversation of, hey, there's this crazy lady on a podcast talking about this. Explain, what do you see in your school? Ask the questions, because these kids are getting educated by social media. They're being approached by drug dealers on social media. And we
Yeah.
as adults opening that gateway drug then of marijuana, then it allows for more experimentation of harsher drugs. And these drugs on the streets now are deadly. Fentanyl, carfentanil, that little thing of one pill can kill, it sounds kind of cliche, but it can. Growing up, Black Beauties and Quaaludes and stuff, that was, cocaine, whatever. Now these kids are dealing with some harsh things. And so we need to get back to educating, stop the demand. That would help with the supply of the drugs coming into our country.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, there's so many interesting things about some of the new marijuana products and other things. I've been doing a lot of research on it, and it's just crazy to see some of the synthetics that are out there that are super dangerous, that are incredibly dangerous. And, people just think it's a regular, it's not the plant anymore. It's now all these other derivatives that are coming from that. So,
absolutely.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Stacy. I'm excited to talk to you offline. I have a few things I want to just kind of chat about, but thank you for your time here. Thank you for your experience. And it was a very insightful podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to Borderland Narcosis, an Ironclad original presented by First Form. Go check out your First Form supplements at firstform.com/Borderland. Take care.
And now, a preview of Target Intelligence PSYOP.
One of the things that stood out is CIA's involvement in mainstream media and Hollywood. And I think a lot of people have suspected that over the years. You see a lot of comments and a lot of discussions about that. But this makes it even more real because there's very specific examples of how they do that, how they approach, what the conversations are like, why they do it. And like we said in the documentary, this is just scratching the surface. This goes very deep.
And now, an exclusive preview of Target Intelligence PSYOP, Chapter 4, The Price of Admission.
Asking you.
I'm Sean Ryan. This is Target Intelligence PSYOP, an Ironclad original.
Maybe you won't believe what I'm going to say, but I swear it's the truth.
Chapter 4.
Go to the moon!
Hollywood's got you.
The Price of Admission. During the time much of the world was shut down during COVID,
Breaking news, just COVID-19 update, coronavirus, a new normal.
Dr. Matthew Alford was at his home in the UK when he received a strange delivery to his door.
I think it was literally in lockdown. I was doing nothing in my life, as you can imagine, and I got a letter through the door, and it was from the CIA, and I thought, this is bizarre.
Dr. Alford is an author and lecturer of the University of Bath who specializes in studying the relationship between the entertainment industry and the U.S. military. After opening the envelope, Dr. Alford found himself reading the personal emails of one of the most famous figures in Hollywood.
Oh, why have I got a letter from the CIA? And why am I reading all of Ben Affleck's emails?
Then he remembered, 8 years prior to receiving the letter, he'd filed a Freedom of Information Act request, seeking to find out if the CIA had secretly worked on the 2012 film Argo. In the movie, which was also directed by Ben Affleck, Affleck plays a real-life CIA operative named Tony Mendez. In 1979, Mendez was part of an elaborate plot to evacuate 6 U.S. diplomats from Iran. After the United States Embassy in Tehran was taken over by Iranian Islamists, though 66 members of the embassy staff were taken hostage. 6 managed to evade capture and escape to the homes of the Canadian embassy officers. The CIA needed to figure out a way to get them out of the country while they hid with the Canadian embassy staff. Mendez's plan involved infiltrating the country by posing as Hollywood producers who wanted to film a big-budget movie in Iran.
I got an idea.
They're a Canadian film crew for a science fiction movie.
I fly into Tehran. We all fly out together as a film crew. I need you to help me make a fake movie.
So you want to come to Hollywood and act like a big shot without actually doing anything?
Yeah.
You'll fit right in.
Though the film was a hit and won an Academy Award for Best Picture, some critics were quick to point out the liberties Affleck seemed to take with the story of what actually happened. Many critics noted how the Hollywood film version seemed to inflate the role the CIA played in the rescue. The Canadian magazine Maclean's wrote, "The movie rewrites history at Canada's expense, making Hollywood and the CIA the saga's heroic saviors, while Canadian Ambassador Ken Taylor is demoted to a kindly concierge." In response to the criticism, in later versions of the film, Affleck would change the on-screen postscript text to read,
"The involvement of the CIA complemented efforts of the Canadian Embassy to free the 6 held in Tehran. To this day, the story stands as an enduring model of international cooperation between governments."
What Dr. Alford wanted to know is if the CIA itself was involved in Affleck's artistic liberties with the story. Dr. Alford is the author of the book National Security Cinema, the shocking new evidence of government control in Hollywood, and co-produced the documentary Theaters of War. He and his fellow researchers frequently submit Freedom of Information Act requests to learn about the CIA and the military's efforts to influence the movies and TV shows Americans watch. As it turned out, the CIA was very involved in supporting Argo.
And of course, it was that I'd put in a Freedom of Information Act request in 2012 that had taken over 8 years to come through. No one knew that there'd only been actual contact between CIA and producers for that show until this information came through. So there are several of these shows that actually, whether they intended to cover it up or not, basically the information didn't come out that they'd been working on those, that they'd been working closely with the producers.
And, in many cases, the changes that the CIA and military branches were making to major blockbusters and TV shows weren't just minor tweaks to characters for accuracy. What Dr. Alford and his colleagues have uncovered is that in many cases, the military directly oversees key elements of mainstream entertainment. Dr. Alford uncovered that Affleck even visited the CIA headquarters to meet with key figures there in the lead up to the movie. However, documents Dr. Alford reviewed show that permission to film at the Langley campus was only given after several script reviews by the CIA. Emails between officials at CIA called the film a, quote, good news CIA story. In an interview with The Guardian leading up to the movie, Affleck acknowledged the primary similarity between what his job as a Hollywood director is and what the CIA does: deception.
One of the themes of Argo is about storytelling and how powerful it is, from political theater to the way we kind of communicate to our children to the way that we inspire people, and it's interesting that Hollywood and the clandestine services are both spend most of their time convincing people that something that's not true is in fact true.
He also added this half-joking observation.
I think probably Hollywood is full of CIA agents, and we just don't know it. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to discover that, this was extremely common.
But Affleck was already familiar with what it was like to work with the agency when he collaborated with them on Argo. He'd previously worked with them on the Jack Ryan film, The Sum of All Fears. His former wife, Jennifer Gardner, starred in the TV show Alias, where she played a super spy. The series was supported by the CIA, who worked closely with producers on it. Garner would even be featured in a recruitment video for future spies.
I'm Jennifer Garner. I play a CIA officer on the ABC TV series Alias. In the real world, the CIA serves as our country's first line of defense in the ongoing war against international terrorism. If you're an American citizen and seek a challenging, rewarding career where you can make a difference in the world and here at home, contact the agency.
But what Matthew Alford and his colleagues have discovered is the connections go deeper than most in the public can imagine.
The US military has worked with Hollywood producers for about 110 years or so.
As Dr. Alford explains, the military has long seen value in being able to affect how they are portrayed on screen.